welcome to Crime Clueless. We're your hosts. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Lara.
I'm Krista.
And I'm Kayla.
Well, how's everybody doing?
Good.
Doing
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. We're happy to be here recording again.
Yes, it's
Very
my
excited
favorite.
for this case.
It's a wild one.
At least you didn't say we're going to hate it.
I didn't say it.
You thought it?
I was just going to say that.
You told me not to say it, so. Oh, all right. Let me paint you a picture. It's a warm June night in 1992, Springfield, Missouri. Graduation parties are winding down, friends are saying their goodbyes, and the promise of summer is just starting to feel real. By the morning, 3 women, Sherrill Levitt, her daughter Suzie Streeter, and Suzie's friend Stacy McCall, vanish. No signs of a struggle, no big clues left behind, just gone. And here's the kicker. Over 30 years later, we still don't know what happened to them. It's one of those cases that make you double-check your locks and think twice about trusting the quiet suburbs. But don't worry, we're going to dig into everything, their last known movements, the bizarre theories, and even the leads that seem too wild to believe. And trust me, by the end of this, you're going to be just as obsessed with this case as we are. Let's talk about who these women were, because they're so much more than a missing persons headline. First, there's Sherrill Levitt. She was 47 years old at the time and the kind of woman everyone seems to admire. She was independent, hardworking, and incredibly talented at her job as a hairdresser. Sherrill had this warm, inviting personality that made her clients not just trust her with their hair, but also with their stories. She just moved into her cozy little house on Delmar Street a couple of months earlier and was turning it into her perfect space. She loved decorating. Think lots of little personal touches that made her house feel like a home. It was clear she'd worked hard to get to this point, and you could tell she was proud of it. Then there's Suzie Streeter, Sherrill's 19-year-old daughter. Suzie had this striking look, bleach blonde hair, a radiant smile, and a style that made her stand out. She was bold, she was confident, and had a bit of a rebellious teenager streak. She loved music and was a talented singer, and it seemed like she was ready to take on the world after graduating from high school. But underneath all that confidence, she was close with her mom. They had a solid relationship, even if they butted heads now and then, like, any mother and daughter. She was a mix of free spirit and someone who deeply cared about the people in her life. And finally, there's Stacy McCall. Stacy was Suzie's best friend, and honestly, she was one of those people you'd want in your corner. At 18, she was full of life, she was kind, and she had this way of making everyone feel comfortable. She was close with her family, especially her mom, and she was always thinking about her next steps, college, her future, and all of the possibilities ahead. Stacy had this bubbly energy that made people gravitate towards her. She and Suzie had been inseparable, and like most best friends, they had those big dreams about what life after high school would look like. The 3 of them were different, but in ways they complemented each other. Sherrill had built this stable, nurturing home. Suzie brought her edge and creativity, and Stacy added that bright, optimistic spark. Together, they were just living life like any of us, until everything came to a sudden, unexplained stop. So when we talk about this case, it's important to remember that these were real people. They had plans, dreams, they had routines, they laughed, loved, argued, and most importantly, they should still be here. June 6th, 1992, was supposed to be a night of celebration. It was graduation day for Suzie Streeter and Stacy McCall, a milestone I'm sure they'd been looking forward to for months. The day was packed. Ceremonies, pictures, hugs, teary-eyed congratulations from family and friends. All those moments that feel big at the time, but even bigger in hindsight. After the formalities, the girls did what graduating teenagers do. They hit the town. There were parties to attend, friends to see. By all accounts, Stacy and Suzie were having the time of their lives that night. They bounced between graduation parties, laughing, talking about summer plans, and just soaking it all in. Originally, Stacy was supposed to stay at another friend, Janelle's house, on that night. It seemed like the perfect plan, It was a safe place that was close to the action, but sometime in the early hours of June 7th, plans shifted. Suzie suggested they head back to her house instead, maybe because they were tired, maybe they just wanted somewhere quieter, who knows. Either way, after their last party was broken up by police around 2 a.m., they drove back to Suzie's place on Delmar Street. Sherrill Levitt, Suzie's mom, was already home. She'd spent the evening on her own, probably winding down after a day of work. Neighbors remember hearing her working on a project. Some say that she was stripping wallpaper in her bathroom. Other reporting says that she was redoing her closet. She was meticulous like that, always improving her space. By the time Suzie and Stacy arrived, she was probably fast asleep. The girls pulled into the driveway, Suzie's red Ford Escort and Stacy's Toyota Corolla parked side by side. The kind of detail you might notice if you were walking by. The house was quiet. They walked inside, probably chatting about the night's event, maybe laughing at some inside joke from the party. Just the normal end to a teenage night out. The next morning, they had plans to visit Whitewater, which is a water park in Branson. They had a lot of other friends that were planning on going, and some had gotten a motel room in Branson, but the girls decided to stay in Springfield and just head to the water park in the morning. Here's where the story takes a chilling turn. By the morning of June 7th, everything was wrong. Janelle, their friend that they were thinking about staying with, and her boyfriend Mike were planning to drive the girls to Whitewater Park. They were all going to go together. They called multiple times in the morning because they were heading over to pick them up. When the girls didn't answer, they decided just to drive over, thinking maybe they were still asleep. They got home really late the night before. Stacy's mom, Janice McCall, was also trying to reach them. She called multiple times and got no response. Janice called Suzie's house because no cell phone, right? Back in 1992. By mid-morning, Janice decided just to drive over and see what was going on. When Janelle and Mike got to the house and they were there first, no one answered, even though all the cars were parked outside. They noted that the door was unlocked but not open. When Janice got there, she reported that things seemed off. The cars were still in the driveway, right where they'd left them. The front door was unlocked, like we said, not unusual for the time or the neighborhood, but unsettling in hindsight. Inside, it was almost too quiet. There were no signs of a struggle. There was no chaos, just an empty house that felt frozen in time. Janice noted some odd details. The purses of all three women were still in the living room, neatly lined up. Suzie and Stacy's makeup bags were left out, like maybe they'd started getting ready for the day but never finished, or maybe it was out from taking off makeup the night before after their parties. Janice noted that Sherrill's cigarettes were out, and she never went anywhere without those. They were just sitting on the table. Their dog, Cinnamon, a little Yorkshire Terrier, was still there and seemed really agitated and was barking. And then there was the coffee pot, half full, with a freshly brewed pot that suggested someone had started their morning routine and been interrupted. There was also a half can of Coke left out, unfinished. The TV was on, but it was only playing static, which added to the weird vibes.
That gives me like Ring vibes.
I know, right? That's all I can think of too.
That's creepy.
Despite all of these strange signs, nothing screamed crime scene. There was no blood, no signs of forced entry, no broken furniture, nothing to suggest that anything violent had happened. It was just empty, like they'd stepped out for breakfast or something and never came back.
That seems so eerie.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with all the cars still there.
Yeah. And the
Right.
purses, like it definitely feels like they were in the middle of something.
Right. And that's, what makes this case so haunting. It's just picked up and gone.
That's crazy. I don't like that.
I don't either. I mean, what could have happened to three women in the safety of their own home in a quiet suburban neighborhood without anyone noticing a thing? What happened next is the part where things start to unravel, not just for the families of Sherrill, Suzie, and Stacy, but for the entire community of Springfield. Janice, who was Stacy's mom, was deeply unsettled after finding the house empty. Stacy always let her parents know where she was, always. Janice started making calls first to family friends, and then she called the police. Meanwhile, friends of Suzie and Stacy began stopping by the house, worried when they hadn't heard from them. Over the course of the day, several people entered the house, walking through, touching things, and unintentionally disturbing what might have been crucial evidence.
That's too bad.
I know. It's what makes you cringe when you look back on it. You know, just all of these people walking through.
Could have been, fingerprints or something like that. And then someone else picked it up.
Or stuff. Or somebody that then came back through the house.
Oh, yeah.
That
right?
too.
And now you've got a reason for your fingerprints to be there.
Oh, yeah. I was there just checking out the scene. Checking in on them. Yeah.
So one of those big things was a broken porch light. This detail, it seems small at first, but it keeps coming up as you try to piece the story together. When Janelle and Mike had arrived at the house that morning, they noticed the porch light was shattered. Glass from the bulb was scattered across the ground near the front door. In hindsight, this could be a critical clue, but at the time, it didn't raise any alarm bells.
Did it look like it had exploded, like the light bulb had exploded, or did it look like it had been hit with something?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
And they don't know. And that's the trick here, because it either could have exploded, like you said, and been nothing related. Maybe it got hit by a rock or something like that,
Yeah.
Or somebody could have kicked it being taken out of the house, or someone could have broken it trying to...
Like, how is someone that tall?
No, like being held,
That makes more sense, but I'm just picturing like a karate kick.
I thought that too. I'm like, they have an impressive high kick there.
Yeah, that's also possible.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
I had the same thought, Kayla. It's okay.
That's good.
No, I'm glad when you say those things because I can clarify. Also, it could have been somebody breaking the light on purpose.
Yeah.
So that there's no light,
No neighbors could see someone going into the house if it was dark.
Yeah. Exactly. So when
It had to have happened in the morning, though, with the half pot of coffee.
I know. I wonder that, too. The makeup bags, I feel like you can explain, but the coffee is a little bit harder.
Well, if they had started getting ready to go to the water park, if they were, wearing makeup or, even just putting on lotion or something like that on their face.
Was the coffee warm?
I don't know. Police didn't come until way later.
Because maybe Stacy's mom was staying up to wait for them. Maybe she had a pot late.
Which is entirely possible.
But she didn't know that they were going to be staying there because they had been planning to stay at Janelle's house.
Yeah.
Maybe, that's true.
Susie's mom. Sorry, not Stacy's mom.
Oh, sorry.
Suzie is the daughter that lives there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, they're all the S's.
Yeah.
Sherry, Stacy, and Suzie. Yeah. But when her friends got there and saw that broken light, they cleaned it up, thinking that they were being helpful, and getting rid of broken glass on the ground.
That is helpful.
If it's not a crime scene. What makes the light even more curious is where it's placed. It's right by the front door, meaning that anyone coming in to the house that night would have passed under it. Like we talked about, all of the big questions. How did it get broken? What happened? Unfortunately, because the glass was cleaned up before the police arrived, we'll probably never know. It's one of those details that just sticks with you. A tiny, seemingly random detail that might hold the key to what happened that night. The police finally arrived later that day. At first, they weren't convinced anything serious had happened. It was 1992, a time when the idea of 3 adult women vanishing without warning didn't immediately scream crime. Maybe they'd gone on a spontaneous trip. Maybe they'd had an argument and left to cool off. The initial hesitation cost valuable time, hours that could have been spent locking down the house and preserving evidence.
Yeah, but all their cars were there.
Right. So this is way before Uber or Lyft.
They could have gone on a walk or
True. Yeah.
a bike ride.
And so when Stacy's mom called, it had only been a couple hours.
Yeah.
Like you said, they could have just gone on a walk or a hike or something.
Yeah.
I still think the detail of they were going to the water park
Yeah.
should have stood out more.
Especially when they were getting picked up by somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't just change their minds and decide not to drive themselves. They were getting picked up and would have had to let them know that they weren't going anymore.
And they didn't get home till 2 a.m. and they're 18, 19-year-olds. They're
Right. It seems really early.
they're not going to get up early for a hike.
Right.
Probably not.
That makes me tired just thinking about not getting home till 2 and then being up before 8 to go to a water park all day.
Yeah.
To be fair, they're 18.
I know.
mean,
Yeah.
now, I need 2 to 3 business days to recover. But at 18, I maybe could have done that.
Yeah.
That's true.
As the investigation officially began, some strange details started to emerge. For one, neighbors reported seeing a strange van in the area that night. It was described as a green or blue Dodge van parked near Sherrill's house around the time they think the women might have vanished. But no one could agree on the exact model. No one had gotten a license plate, of course, and the van had left by the morning. As police started their investigation in the house, they faced a really frustrating reality. There was almost no physical evidence to work with. The house on Delmer Street looked normal, too normal. There were, like I said, no signs of forced entry. There was no blood. There was no sign of a struggle. The house didn't look like it had been robbed or anything. It was just as if they had gotten up and walked away. There were a few details that stood out, all 3 women's belongings being there, especially their purses. Where would you go without that? Their makeup bags, Suzie and Stacy's, were left out. And to police, it looked like they had started to get ready for the day, but stopped abruptly. And then Sherrill's cigarettes and her lighter were also on the table. The phone lines provided another clue, but it's a strange one. When Janelle and Mike were in the home in the morning, the phone rang and Janelle answered it. She heard what she described as a teen boy making sexual innuendos. She hung up. The phone rang again and she let it ring. Also, at some point after the women were last seen, a message was left on the home's answering machine. The content of that message was described as strange, but police didn't release the details at the time. And what's even more frustrating, that message was accidentally erased before investigators could analyze it.
Oh, wow.
How did that happen?
Stacy's mom saw that it was blinking and she thought that perhaps they had left a message to say where they were going. I'm sure she was frantic.
Yeah.
She accidentally deleted it.
Oh, no.
Oh, gosh.
It's so awful.
That's weird. The first call and then like a weird random. Why would they call the house if it was like the people?
I know. I don't know.
Them?
I mean, maybe.
I'm interested to know what was on the message, but.
Yeah, me too. The reasoning for listening to it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Because if she could call, why wouldn't she have just called her own home?
Yeah.
Or maybe if it was Sherrill calling.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know.
They had gone, maybe she was thinking they had gone a walk somewhere and got lost and found a diner with a phone and they were calling to see if someone could come pick them up.
Yeah. I don't know why you would expect that people were in your home, though.
I don't know.
Yeah, no.
I don't know. Maybe someone has a theory on that, but I'm not sure.
I mean, they knew that someone was coming to pick them up. Maybe that's what she was thinking, that they were calling because, we went out. And
yeah, that's possible.
we didn't get back in time. So we're calling to let you know because they were supposed to come there to pick them up.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's true.
if she was thinking maybe that's why they would be calling.
You would also have your home phone memorized.
Yeah.
Maybe not all of your friends.
But if Stacy's with them, then she would have her home phone.
She would. Yeah.
But maybe it was for Janelle and Mike who were supposed to pick them up.
Yeah, maybe.
Or maybe that's what she was thinking it was for.
Yeah.
I think that's why Janelle answered the phone when it rang.
Yeah.
And she was there.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
could. That's what I was thinking.
Mhm.
If she thought, they were out, they didn't get back in time.
Right.
Calling to see if we're there to let us know, because if they didn't
Yeah.
have a cell phone,
Mm-hmm.
that would be the only way to try and reach them and say,
Right.
hey, sorry, we're late.
Yeah, but we'll be right there.
Yeah.
So as we mentioned with the porch light, police didn't get to see that. And I think they were hoping that they could analyze it for fingerprints, but I'm not exactly sure that fingerprints would be on there. I don't think that's how you would break the light bulb unless you were unscrewing it and dropped it, maybe.
Maybe.
Inside the house, they did find what they described as potential fingerprints. And they also found a couple on the car parked in the driveway, but that lead turned into a dead end. The prints that they found were never matched to a suspect. And over the years, their significance has been debated just because there were so many people going in and out of the house the whole time. Then there's the dog, Cinnamon. She was left behind, visibly distressed but unharmed. Police couldn't ignore this detail. If someone broke into the house, why didn't Cinnamon bark loud enough to alert neighbors? Or did she?
Well, she's a small dog, too.
Yeah, but you heard my dog, the little one, she's the loudest.
Yeah, but I mean, also with it being a little dog, they do bark
a lot. That's
a lot.
True.
So they may not have thought anything of it.
And the other thing is, maybe she didn't bark because she knew who was there.
Yeah, that too.
Or maybe she was barking and it was early morning and everyone was asleep in their house.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because when we leave, sometimes my dog's barking inside and I can hear her until the garage door shuts.
Yeah.
And then I can't hear her anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Or unless I'm close to the door.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't think my neighbor could hear her inside their house.
I would hope not.
I hope not, too.
Yeah, that's
I hear my
true.
neighbor's dog, but only when they're outside.
Yeah, same.
And then you have my dog who rarely barks. I think if someone tried to break into my house, she'd be like, oh, look, a friend.
A new best friend.
Oh, they have a knife. We're going to play.
Yeah.
Little dogs aren't that way, though.
No.
That's true.
My dog barks when there's
When
nothing,
we come over.
or there's nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have the big scary pit bull.
So scary, Lola. Oh, we don't know about the dog and if either they just couldn't hear it, or if she didn't bark. But if she didn't bark, if they could hear her when she was barking, that seems like a lead, right? The lack of really any evidence led to a paralysis in the investigation. No clear signs of foul play. They were given tons of tips, but none of them led anywhere. And as more time passed, the trail grew colder. The house on Delmar Street became both a haunting reminder of the mystery and frustration for investigators. How could 3 women disappear from such an ordinary place, leaving behind so few clues? As word spread, the case started to take over the town. Springfield wasn't the kind of place where people just vanished, and the idea that it could happen in their quiet suburban neighborhood was terrifying. People began locking their doors for the first time, which we've heard in several cases.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You said something similar in the Nancy case, too.
And in Robin's case.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Tips began pouring in, but for every lead, there seemed to be a dead end. One of the most bizarre tips came in the form of a prank. A man called a local news station claiming to have the women and demanding a ransom. It was not funny.
No.
And it wasted precious time.
That's never funny.
It's never funny. I don't know why people do it all the time. Never do it.
No.
The FBI actually got involved pretty quickly on June 9th, so it had only been 2 days. Even with their resources, the case remained frustratingly cold. Then came the infamous gravesite tip in 1993. A year after the women had disappeared, a psychic claimed to have a vision of their bodies buried under a parking lot of a local hospital. The police took it seriously enough to investigate, but were met with legal red tape when they tried to dig it up. To this day, no excavation has been done, and the lead just remains open.
That's wild.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit and kind of what they did and what happened. As the days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months, hope started to fade. The families of Sherrill, Suzie, and Stacy were left clinging to whatever scraps of information came their way. Janice McCall became a relentless advocate, keeping the case alive in the media and pushing investigators to keep looking. Despite her efforts, the trail grew cold. And here's the part that keeps me up at night. How could 3 women just vanish into thin air with so few clues? No signs of a struggle, no clear suspects, just an empty house. To this day, we don't know who did it, why they did it, or how they managed to pull it off. But there are theories, and that's where we're headed next. One of the most enduring theories in the case of the Springfield Three involves the mysterious green or blue van that was reportedly seen near Sherrill's house on the night of June 6th. Over the years, the van has become almost mythical, a central thread in these theories about what happened to Sherrill, Suzie, and Stacy. Witnesses in the neighborhood reported seeing a van parked in the vicinity of the house in the early morning hours. The descriptions, though, varied slightly. Some said it was a Dodge. Others weren't as sure of the make. The color was consistently described as greenish blue. What's unsettling is that this van seemed out of place to the neighbors. Delmar Street wasn't a high-traffic area, and the presence of this unfamiliar big vehicle was enough to catch the attention of more than just a few neighbors. One of the most chilling accounts comes from a local woman who reported seeing a man driving a van that matched the description. According to her, the driver was acting strangely, possibly even trying to lure her closer. It's unclear if this sighting happened right near the Levitt house or someone else in Springfield, but it stuck with investigators. There's also another van theory where somebody claimed that they saw a young blonde woman driving a van that looked scared and almost like she was taking directions from someone sitting in the back.
Oh, that's creepy.
That one I've not seen as many places. It is really creepy. This theory suggests that the women were taken from the house and forced in the van. Some believe that the perpetrator or perpetrators used deception to gain access to the home, maybe posing as a utility worker or someone in distress needing help. This makes sense if it were in the morning,
Yeah.
but not at 2 a.m.
No. Well, and based on the state of the home, it seems like it would have happened earlier in the morning.
Yeah.
I think after they'd woken up.
Yeah.
The only thing I was thinking, this is my own theory.
I like it.
If someone was in there with the mom, they had gone in, tied her up or whatever, surprised her. I mean, it could be 2 a.m.
Yeah, that's true.
And then they were in there, maybe they had guns. And when the girls got home, they surprised them. But if their makeup bags were out, that
They could have put them out. Maybe they're staging something.
maybe, or maybe they had been there earlier in the day and left their stuff out.
You did say that all of their purses were lined up.
They could have, yeah. And the people could have done that too. But if they came in and surprised them, they had guns. The mom was already tied up. I mean, they tied them up and carried them out. There wouldn't be a struggle for that.
And you would get rid of that light to do that.
Yeah. That was
Neighbors didn't see you coming out.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought, to have it so there wouldn't be signs of a struggle if they already kind of had the mom and then surprised the girls when they got there.
Well, and also the girls had 2 other places they were thinking about staying. They'd been invited to that motel to spend the night. So they were like ready to go first thing in the morning for the water park, or they were going to stay at Janelle's house. So it could have been thinking the girls weren't coming home.
Yeah. Had they been at their house earlier in the day, like getting ready for parties or anything like that?
Yeah, actually they had. So they did the high school graduation in the afternoon. And then it's reported that following the graduation ceremony, they came back to Sherrill's house probably to get ready for their parties. And then later that evening went to the different parties. So
they could have left their makeup bags out.
Absolutely.
I don't clean mine up all the time.
Wow.
And I'm not 18.
I never clean mine up.
So it definitely could have been out from that and not from anything that night.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it very well could have happened at 2 a.m. then.
And also, I mean, the coffee, what if she had made it like in the afternoon because she wanted to wait out for the girls and she wanted to work on her closet or her bathroom or whatever?
Yeah, if she was doing work.
Yeah, and maybe had half and was like, I'll just heat it up in the morning.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Possible.
Yeah.
Or she had a busy day. Maybe she made it in the morning and left for the day and forgot about it.
Yeah, that's true
She's
too.
also a mom.
Yeah, yep. And she works and it's graduation day for her baby, right?
It's a busy day. She could have made it and left it there.
Yeah, all of those things can definitely be explained. And the light, it just makes sense that it would be night if it was broken.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my theory.
I think that's a good theory. I think it makes a lot of sense. It can feed into some of the other theories too.
Well, and I feel like most of the time abductions would happen at night because there's less witnesses. You know, I don't feel like that's something that's going to happen at 9 a.m. when people are out getting their mail or getting their newspaper.
I mean, even 6 a.m. in June,
it's still light out.
Light out, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, at least here, that's when everyone's out walking their dog and everything.
Yeah.
You know, it's too hot later in the day. And Missouri is super humid, I would think.
Yeah, they'd want to be out earlier.
So even though a lot of people saw the van, no one could provide a license plate number or a really definitive description of either the van or the ones that claim they saw the driver, the male driver. They were never able to get a description of what he looked like enough to be able to investigate that.
So I've become a little too aware lately. I was walking my dog the other night and I saw a girl getting into a car and it looked like she was just getting into an Uber, but I was like, well, just in case. It's silver. It was a Ford.
There you go. I'm gonna
take notes.
maybe write.
The police come by tomorrow for some reason.
Yep, I'll just write down that license plate real quick.
There's a paper license plate. I'm
Oh.
telling you, I paid way too much attention to
I'm
this car.
so proud of you.
It was just a girl getting in an Uber. It's fine.
Well, it could have not been. It could have been an Uber.
They can be coming to you tomorrow.
True. You never know.
Yeah.
Never know.
Write it down.
Yeah. Always.
I know my memory wouldn't last another day of that.
No, this
I
was
know you'd
like
have
2
to
weeks
write
ago.
it down. Oh, okay. I thought you meant last night.
No, this was a while ago.
Oh, I
Gotcha.
thought you meant last night too.
Yeah.
It's like,
Sorry, I
oh,
should have clarified. No,
We're
this was like 2 weeks ago.
We're
I
like, they
remember it.
still could be coming.
You never know.
well, you
Yeah.
still have a good memory then.
Yeah. Since they didn't have a real description of the van or the driver, investigators tried to chase down every reported sighting of similar vehicles, but each one ended up being a dead end. Years later, this theory was reignited when a convicted killer, Robert Craig Cox, made a cryptic claim. That was a lot of C's. Cox, who had a history of violence, was living in Springfield at the time of the disappearances and suggested that he knew what had happened to the women. When pressed, he pointed to the van theory, stating that their bodies would never be found.
Oh, gosh.
We don't know.
Creepy.
It is. We don't know if he was genuinely connected or if it was just a cruel mind game. Cox never provided concrete evidence, and his statements have been met with skepticism. The van theory leaves us with so many questions. Was the vehicle connected to the crime, or was its presence just a coincidence? If it was involved, why had no one come forward after all of these years? And perhaps the hardest question of all, did this van carry 3 women away from Delmore Street that night, never to be seen again? Another one of the details that sticks with you, and maybe because it's so simplistic that it ends up being haunting. 1 vehicle, 1 night, and 3 lives changed forever. The next theory is the grave site theory that we touched on earlier. This theory centers on the idea that the bodies of Sherrill, Suzie, and Stacy may have been buried under a parking lot in Springfield. Kind of sounds bizarre, but let's unpack this. In 1993, about a year after the women vanished, a psychic came forward claiming to have had a vision. The vision pointed to an area near Cox South Hospital, which is a hospital not far from Delmore Street. Specifically, the psychic believed the women were buried beneath freshly poured concrete in the parking lot on the hospital's property. Normally, police don't put much stock in psychic tips, but this one did gain traction for a couple of reasons. First, the timeline. The hospital had expanded around the time of the women's disappearance, pouring new concrete for the parking structure shortly after June 1992. Could someone have taken advantage of the construction site to hide their crime?
So it would have been a dirt lot at the time of the crime.
Mm-hmm.
They could have even been starting on the construction site, so it would have been freshly dug at that time, maybe waiting for concrete, but
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but that's
The timeline is spooky.
I feel like I saw that in a TV show, but I can't think of
It's
what it
happened in real life. There was
was. Yeah, sure.
one who buried it under, and I can't think of the name. They buried their victim under where they were pouring a highway
Mm.
in California. And then there was another one out on the East Coast that they did dig up and found, and it had been under newly poured roads.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
Oh.
Krista, I think you're thinking of Dexter.
I think I'm also thinking of you. I
Oh,
think it
could be.
happens in both.
Well, in
Mm.
Dexter Trinity Killer season, at the job sites where they're building the homes,
Yeah.
that's where
Oh,
he
yeah.
hides
That's right.
the boys that he kidnaps.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think I'm thinking of you,
Mm,
but I do remember that from Dexter
I
as
don't
well.
remember that from you. It's been too long since I've seen that one, I guess.
I'll have to double back to that one.
hmm
Another reason that they took this one seriously was that the psychic's description was eerily specific. Even though psychics aren't typically considered reliable, the location matched up with the construction records and the fact that pouring concrete right there at the exact same time could be used to conceal bodies seemed at the very least worth exploring. Authorities did investigate. They brought in a ground-penetrating radar expert to scan the parking lot. The radar reportedly detected 3 anomalies.
What?
Disturbances in the soil that could, in theory, be consistent with the burial site.
And they never dug this up?
No.
What?
No excavation was ever done, which is
Why?
the hospital didn't want to tear up its parking lot. And
Well, that's too bad.
I know,
Dig it up.
right?
Come on.
When you've got the radar that shows that there's 3 specific things and you're being told that it's 3 women, I mean,
Well, is this not something that they could obtain a warrant for? I feel like.
too, they put up legal hurdles and logistical challenges that I guess made it impossible to move forward. So the anomalies were left unexplored. This theory and this whole part of this case just boggles my mind. I hate it.
Yeah, I don't like this. That's terrible.
Right? Critics of the theory say that it relies too heavily on the psychic's vision, and I could see that until you bring in the expert.
Yeah, if they're like, well, a psychic told us, so we're going to dig this up, that's one
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Where they've scanned the ground and been like, okay, there's definitely 3 things
Mhm.
underneath here.
Yep. And I wonder if they go back if we have better technology for that now.
Maybe.
I don't know for sure.
They should.
The hospital is pointing out, it could just be construction debris or
Yeah, but let's make sure.
I agree 100%.
And unfortunately, it might have been taken more seriously
Mhm.
if it hadn't
Mhm.
they got a tip from someone saying, I saw this happen there.
Oh, for
I bet
sure.
they would
Yeah.
have let them do
Gotten
it.
that warrant. Mhm.
Unfortunately, it probably was because their initial tip from it came from a psychic.
Mhm. That's what I was
Probably.
thinking too,
Agreed.
Laura.
I don't know. This theory just leaves me with a pit in my stomach.
Yeah, it's
It's like it's right there.
too bad that they couldn't have investigated that further.
I agree.
Especially once you said the radar detected
Mhm.
something.
3
3.
anomalies.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I do wonder if they brought in dogs or if it's too far down or they can't get through concrete.
Yeah.
I would
I know.
guess it's too far down. Usually for a parking lot, you have to have pretty thick.
And it was a year later, right?
So we'll just sit on that one for a minute and we'll move on to Robert Craig Cox, who we talked about briefly before.
That's interesting that the hospital is Cox Hospital too.
Oh my
Isn't it?
gosh. Yes.
Good catch, Laura.
What?
I didn't even notice that.
I was
Yes.
like, oh,
Yeah. Cox
it's
South
the
Hospital.
same
Mm,
last name. And the same name as his last name.
That's really weird.
All right, we're going to start a new conspiracy theory.
Yeah, right. He paid to have that so that they would never dig into it.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
Robert Craig Cox wasn't just any suspect. By the time of the women's disappearance in 1992, he had already been convicted of the brutal murder of a young woman in Florida. The conviction was later overturned on a technicality. Fun.
Mm-hmm.
His history painted a picture of a man with a dangerous, violent streak, and the kicker, in 1992, he was living in Springfield, Missouri. His first link to the case came after he was arrested for an unrelated crime in Texas. During questioning, he made an unsettling claim. He said he knew what happened to the Springfield Three. According to him, the women were dead and their bodies would never be found, which is horrifying.
That's similar. I mean, I'm thinking back to Christine, the case in Florida
Mm-hmm.
with the guy who was making random comments about that case.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it didn't end up being anything. But,
Right.
I mean, you never know. So it's if he was living in Springfield at the time, you know, you
Mhm.
kind of gotta. Was he just making claims about a case he knew about, or
Right.
was he actually involved?
Was he trying to get sent back to Missouri for some reason? They pressed him for details. He refused to elaborate, citing a supposed code of conduct honor among criminals.
Okay.
Yeah, this raised eyebrows and posed really frustrating. He wasn't giving up enough information to tie him at all to the case. This theory holds weight because his timeline matches up. He was in Springfield at the time of the disappearances, and he worked at a car dealership not far from Sherrill's home. Some have speculated that he could have crossed paths with one or more of the women, maybe even Suzie or Stacy at some point before that night.
I also wonder if he may have rented out a car.
I was
to
literally just
Yeah.
thinking that.
Yeah.
Yep. Working at the car dealership.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. There's also his behavior. He seemed to revel in the attention he got from being a suspect. He gave interviews, he made vague statements, and even seemed to enjoy the speculation.
Mm.
In one interview, he claimed that his girlfriend at the time could provide him with an alibi for the night of the disappearance, but when police followed up, the girlfriend's story didn't completely hold up. She also admitted that Cox had pressured her into lying for him. Not a good alibi. However, like so much in this case, the trail went cold. His cryptic statements, while unsettling, weren't enough to charge him, and there was no physical evidence linking him to the scene or to the victims.
How much longer after their disappearance was this? Do you know?
It was...
Was it 1 year later in 1993?
That's when the psychic
Oh, that's right.
had the theory or the vision about them
Yeah.
in the hospital parking lot.
I wish I was a psychic. That'd be cool.
You could be one.
I'm not.
So he was arrested in 1994, and it sounds like he made the claims from then until 1997 while he was behind bars. So I don't know if he was then trying to get out or...
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm. The Robert Craig Cox theory is one of the leads that seems almost too perfect. He's a convicted killer with a proven history of violence in the right place at the right time. There's just no concrete evidence to point him to this case. Maybe he's just toying with investigators, or he has no connection at all. It's hard to say without any proof.
When was his first murder that he committed?
His first arrest was in 1978 when he was 19.
Oh, so quite a ways before this.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Maybe he was helping some
Maybe.
budding killers that he found in Springfield.
Yeah, that's
Or
entirely
maybe
possible.
He could have been part of it too.
Mm-hmm.
Really heartbreaking theory that's been floated about this case is human trafficking.
That's what I first thought of when you were talking about this.
In the 1990s, there was a rapid growth of human trafficking in the United States. The thought behind this theory is that someone or a group saw an opportunity that night and acted on it. Stacy and Suzie, two young, attractive women, fit the profile of victims that are often targeted by trafficking rings. Sherrill may have also been included or may have been collateral damage. This theory's super unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, maybe if they saw them like at the parties and followed them home. But I guess that doesn't really fit if they had seen that van in the neighborhood.
But the van might not have even been related or connected.
Yeah, that's true.
Or it could have seen them, after graduation, go home, knew they were going out for parties,
Yeah,
and then we're back there waiting with the van.
hung back waiting for him, possibly.
These trafficking operations can move people without detection. And, they could be transported across state lines, given new identities, really impossible to trace. Springfield, Missouri is situated near major highways like I-44, which is part of the trafficking corridor used to move victims quickly and efficiently.
That's so sad.
It's really sad. The question about this theory is, how did this happen without a single scream or struggle? But really, I think that fits with every single one of these theories.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like we talked about, if it's the middle of the night, it's
Yeah.
entirely possible that no one could hear.
Well, like I said too earlier, if they were already in the house with a gun to
Mm-hmm.
the mom,
Mm-hmm.
threatening them as they walked in, surprised,
Right.
or they were there, grabbed them from behind, covered their mouths.
Mm-hmm.
If someone is in your house too with a gun threatening you, you're not really going to make as much of a struggle, I would
Or
think.
Chloroform.
But you should. Yeah,
You
chloroform.
should, yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if they caught them as they
Yeah.
walked in and covered their mouths and they passed out,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
then that would have been easy for them to just take them
Carry
out
'em out.
without any kind of struggle.
Right. Which is terrifying to think of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That theory, to me, holds some weight where there's no evidence. They've never been seen again. They've never found any trace of them.
Well, and they didn't pull into the garage and close the garage door. Their
Right.
cars were parked in the driveway.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have been easy for someone to see them get home and follow them.
Right.
inside or if they already were inside.
That's very true and terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of leads into the next theory, which is a targeted abduction that's, potentially aimed at just one specific or two specific of these three women. Let's start with Sherrill. She, was respected in her community. She was private and hardworking. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that she was without enemies. Some theorists believe that Sherrill could have crossed paths with someone dangerous, maybe a disgruntled client. I don't know if that one makes as much sense. Or maybe someone from her personal life. There's not a lot known about her personal life, really.
What about her daughter's father? I wonder what kind of relationship they had, if any.
You guys ask so many good questions.
That's why you have us.
Mm-hmm. He's not in very much of the reporting at all. They had gotten divorced several years before she disappeared, but the reason that they got divorced hasn't been really reported. After they got divorced, Sherrill raised her two children, Suzie and Bart, as a single mother. Investigators did look into all of her past relationships, including her relationship with him. He cooperated with the investigation and reportedly was completely cleared as a suspect.
How old was her other child?
We're going to talk about him next.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't know that she had another kid.
Yes, she has a son too. So Bart, he had what's reported as a somewhat strained relationship with Sherrill and his younger sister. He was older than Suzie. Family dynamics were reportedly tense at times, which isn't uncommon. It was scrutinized after the disappearance. Bart was living on his own at the time that they disappeared. He was investigated just like everyone else close to the victims. Investigators looked into his alibi for the night of June 6th to June 7th. He cooperated fully with law enforcement, providing information and answering questions. His alibi came from his girlfriend at the time and also a neighbor. And he also was given a polygraph test, which he passed. So he was removed from the suspect list. Next, we have Suzie, Sherrill's daughter, who some believe could have been the primary target. Suzie had been a little bit rebellious, nothing out of the ordinary for a teenager, enough to raise questions about her inner circle. She had dated a guy, his name was Dustin. He was also looked at in this case. The night the women disappeared, he had robbed a mausoleum. There's not a lot of information, but I guess him and his friends were charged with vandalizing the mausoleum, and they reportedly stole gold fillings from corpses.
Ew.
I know. This was not great for investigators. If they were capable of that kind of behavior, they're curious, what else could be going on. The timing of the vandalism and the disappearance led to speculation that him and his friends could have maybe had a grudge against Suzie. Maybe she had distanced herself from him, in the days or weeks before. I'm not sure if something else had happened.
Disgruntled
Similar.
ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, exactly. It's also suggested that Suzie could have threatened to report the vandalism or, given information to authorities, and maybe they were retaliating. If true, this could align with the theory that Suzie was the primary target and the other two were collateral. I don't know how much I think they could be related just because it seems so clean, the crime scene,
Mhm.
or lack thereof at their house.
Yeah. But if they knew them,
That's true. They could have not had any idea that's why they were there.
yeah.
I feel like 18, 19-year-old boys would not be able to leave it that clean.
That's my only hang up on this specific person of interest.
I mean, but they had other criminal history.
Right. And
Maybe they had robbed
unsettling.
houses before and knew how to get in and out. And
Maybe.
I don't know.
It's
Yeah.
entirely possible. They were questioned, him and his friends were questioned extensively by the Springfield police, but that lead went cold. They couldn't find a direct connection. And again, no evidence. Another weird thing related to Dustin is that his mom had dated a man named Steve Garrison. He was a convicted felon who had spent significant time in prison for unrelated crimes, including charges related to assault and robbery. His criminal history and proximity to the timeline for their disappearance placed him on investigators' radar. While he was incarcerated in the mid-1990s, he reportedly told authorities that he had knowledge of what happened to the 3 girls. He claimed he had overheard conversations between 2 men discussing how they had abducted and killed the women. He provided a chilling detail. He alleged that the women's bodies were buried near an abandoned farmhouse in Webster County, Missouri, which is not far from Springfield. Based on his claims, investigators searched multiple locations in Webster County, including abandoned properties that matched his description. They never found the remains or any personal belongings or anything. So the lack of evidence, of course, on these searches led many to question the credibility of his statements. He claimed that the 2 men he implicated in the case were known criminals, but police have never disclosed their identities publicly.
Did he give them identities?
Yes, he gave the identities to the police.
Okay.
Mhm.
And did they follow up with them? Like, did they interview them?
It's actually unclear if the 2 individuals were investigated further or if they were connected to the crime. I saw one theory that said he was a known drug dealer, and they said it's possible that he was a really good informant for the police. And so they didn't want to ruin that by going to those 2.
Right.
And I don't know if that's true or not, but it makes sense.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Others believe that his statements were just an attempt to gain favorable treatment or attention while he was in prison. Over time, some details of his account appeared to shift, which kind of undermined what he was telling investigators or detectives. After his cooperation, his bail was reduced and he was temporarily housed in a hotel. However, he broke out and right away broke into a woman's apartment in Springfield, and he assaulted her. The victim survived and later testified against him. In September 1995, Garrison revealed that he had been questioned as a suspect in the missing women's cases. He was convicted of rape, sodomy, burglary, and robbery, which resulted in a 40-year prison sentence. I saw that he might be getting out soon, though.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The theory, targeted abduction has to also account for Stacy. She wasn't even supposed to be at Sherrill's house that night. She'd planned to stay at another friend's house after the graduation parties. Her last-minute decision to go back to Suzie's place might have placed her in harm's way, especially if it was targeted at Sherrill or Suzie.
Mm-hmm.
And it could have just complicated everything for the perpetrators, wanting to avoid leaving behind a witness. The targeted abduction theory ties into the idea of deception. It's possible, like we talked about, the women let someone they knew in or someone posing as someone they trusted. This could explain why there were no signs of forced entry, but also they could have just not locked their doors.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure.
And I don't know about you, but if someone's knocking on my door at 2 a.m.,
Oh my gosh.
I'm not letting him in.
No.
No.
Even if it's someone you know.
I'd be like, what are you
know them,
doing?
like super well, like if it was one of you guys, but if it's just like an ex-boyfriend, I'm not letting them in the house.
No.
No.
Especially it sounds like some of the friends were not the best.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's sketchy to just show up at your house at 2 a.m.
I
or
agree.
later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 3 a.m., 4 a.m.
Let's be real. Unless I know someone's coming over, I don't open my door anyway.
I know. No.
I'll look through my peephole and I'm like, I don't know you.
No.
Yeah. Or I do, but I look like this.
You look great.
I didn't mean right now. Oh. Okay. The next theory is the serial killer theory. I mean, when you think about 3 women vanishing without a trace, it's hard not to wonder if a serial killer could be involved. The case fits some of the hallmarks of serial offender behavior: no obvious motive, no clear connection to the perpetrator, and the incredibly clean crime scene.
Were there any active serial killers in the area at that time?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
In the early 1990s, there were several active serial killers operating around the United States. One name that comes up in discussions is Larry Hall. He was a drifter who traveled across the Midwest. He liked to attend Civil War reenactments as a cover for his movements, which is really creepy.
That's weird.
Yeah, he's suspected of abducting and killing multiple women during this time. What makes him a potential suspect is his mobility and the fact that his known crimes often targeted women who were alone or vulnerable. Another serial killer link is Tommy Lynn Sells, who was a drifter and a serial killer. He confessed to multiple murders all across the country. He was known for his opportunistic and brutal style of killing, often targeting homes where he believed people were asleep or defenseless. And he had such a transient lifestyle that it made it difficult to place him in any of the cities that he's now been tied to. It's unclear if he was in Springfield at the time.
If he had a brutal killing style, did he abduct women and brutally kill them other places?
I'm not entirely sure on that one.
Because if it was him doing it in their house, there would have been
some
DNA.
evidence.
Yeah.
Mhm. He could have been the one to help the van, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could have.
Could have stolen it.
True.
Maybe from a state all the way across the country.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it would take 3 of them.
I know.
I
It
feel
feels,
like it has to be like a team.
Yeah,
Right.
I feel like there had to be multiple people.
unless the chloroform or.
But if the 2 girls walked in together,
Well,
I don't
if
know.
Sherrill was tied up or possibly unconscious and he was holding a gun when they came in, and he could have
Maybe.
just told them, tie yourselves up or I shoot.
Mhm.
Maybe.
Get in the van.
Yeah, get in the
Mhm.
van. And if you do anything else, then it's
Yeah,
over, you know.
Right.
that's true.
I don't know. I don't like any of the things that kind of make sense, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. Though I feel like it had to have been at least 2 people.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And none of those that we talked about worked in teams.
Not that we know of.
That's true. There have been other serial killers that do work in teams, which always fascinates me. Like, how do 2 people that want to do that come together, you know?
It's
I
their
don't know.
bond.
Right?
The dark web.
Yeah, but not in 92.
True. Yeah.
So another theory is that they were just the victims of opportunity, which we kind of talked about through all the different theories. You know, maybe it wasn't targeted. Maybe it wasn't a serial killer. Maybe it was just circumstances, you know, the girls getting home late, maybe being followed home, being out at multiple different parties. I don't know if they were drinking or not, but it's entirely possible, you know, celebrating graduation,
Yeah.
everything like that. Maybe they seem more vulnerable at that point.
Maybe.
And the front door was unlocked, which is common in the 90s. If someone approached the house, they could have walked right in. Maybe they just wanted to burglarize the place,
Yeah, maybe they didn't realize anyone was even home.
right?
Seems like if they were there for a burglary, though, and
They would have
they
taken the
would have taken
purses.
the purses.
Right, agreed.
Interesting.
And how do you get all 3 women out of the house?
Mm-hmm.
One of the darker and more controversial theories is the idea of a cover-up, maybe some kind of organized effort to conceal what actually happened to all 3. The theory suggests that someone or several people close to the women were involved in the disappearance and then worked together to hide the truth. It often points to the possibility that the women may have been witnesses to or involved in something they shouldn't have been, maybe a local crime or something more sinister. For example, some have speculated that Sherrill or Suzie might have inadvertently crossed paths with people involved in drug activity or organized crime. Somehow, they just came across the wrong people. One version of this theory involves the idea that the women may have witnessed something like a deal gone wrong, violence, something. If this were the case, the perpetrators might have felt that they had no choice but to silence them. Again, lack of evidence. We can't tie them to anything, but we also don't really have phone records. We don't have really any way to know what they knew or didn't know. Since 1992, not a lot has happened. We had those false leads that we talked about along the way. They've always tried to get the word out, drawing national attention, coverage in news programs. They were covered on America's Most Wanted and Unsolved Mysteries. In the age of social media, interest has resurged. There are online communities that talk about it, keep their story alive. And then over the years, advancements in forensic science have been considered for testing evidence, but there's just not a lot to test.
Yeah.
There's no DNA. There's nothing.
Yeah.
The families of Sherrill, Suzie, and Stacy have kept their memory alive through advocacy and memorial efforts. Especially Stacy's mom is a prominent figure in missing persons advocacy, pushing for awareness and legislative changes to help solve cases like this one. The police department continues to classify the case as active, with occasional public statements reiterating their commitment to finding answers. Investigators continually are reviewing new tips and leads as they come in. Like we always say, someone somewhere has to know something. Here we are over 30 years later, still asking the same questions. What happened to Sherrill, Suzie, and Stacy on that quiet night in Springfield in June? How could 3 women vanish without a trace, leaving behind nothing but a handful of eerie details and endless speculation? This case obviously has haunted investigators, frustrated their families, and it's just such a mystery. And it feels, like there's got to be something that just tips the scale and helps them get answers.
Well, if they could dig up the parking lot.
Or knew what that voicemail was.
Right?
Yeah.
Did they ever find out who called the first time that Janelle picked up and talked to someone?
No. I'm sure it's been too long now.
Yeah.
They probably wouldn't have records or anything.
Yeah.
Janice, Stacy's mother, is quoted as saying, "We live in a nightmare every day, but we still have hope." That hope is why we keep talking about this case and all of our missing person cases. This is why we refuse to let it fade into the background. As long as their story is told, there's a chance that no matter how small, someone knows something. Maybe that someone is you. Maybe you've heard something, seen something, or remember something that could be the key to unlocking this decades-old mystery. If so, please don't stay silent. These women deserve answers, and their families deserve closure. If anyone has information about the Springfield 3 case, they are encouraged to contact the following authorities: the Springfield Police Department. Their tip line is 417-864-1810. Crime Stoppers tip line is 417-869-TIPS, which is 8477. And we'll list all of the other places that you can reach out or submit a tip anonymously and their websites on our blog. Sharing even the smallest piece of information can be critical in solving this case and bringing closure to the families. So what do you guys think?
This is a weird one. Like, it's hard that there's no evidence. There's no DNA. I feel like this had to have been something that was planned, and they had to have known when to come. I do find it interesting. So we talk about how maybe one of the younger girls was the target, which, if they were following them, it could be. But I'm curious what would have happened if they had stayed at Janelle's house.
Yeah.
What I'm kind of thinking about, like, would this still have happened? Would they just have attacked Sherrill?
Right.
Or, would it have just been Sherrill who disappeared? I have so many questions.
I know.
All those what ifs.
Yeah.
The what ifs are tough, I'm sure.
And after 30 years, it's hard that we may never know.
I know.
And it's hard because I feel like this one's different than some of our other missing person cases.
3 of them.
This is 3 of them. It doesn't feel like there's that possibility that they could have chosen to leave, or, it definitely feels like there's some foul play here.
Absolutely. Those are really good thoughts, and I agree with you. I wish that we had more information or evidence, something that could be analyzed, Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Crime Clueless. We truly appreciate you spending time with us. If you're looking for the resources or the places to submit a tip, maybe, we'll link that in our blog. You can find it on our website, crimeclueless.com, under the contributors section. If you would be so kind, please follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube at Crime Clueless. We would love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your thoughts, theories, feedback on this case. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love if you'd take a minute to rate, review, and share our podcast. It really helps us. And you can find Crime Clueless on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, and all major streaming platforms. Remember, refuse to be clueless, careless, or caught off guard.
Not today, murderers.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.